Number 5. Henry Weaver. On June 12, 2018, 69-year-old Henry Weaver of New Tripoli, Pennsylvania, was driving on a country road near his home. Suddenly, another driver cut him off. He said that it scared the dickens out of him. So for a mile or two, Weaver drove closely behind the man's car. Then Weaver and the man in the other car pulled over and started yelling at each other. Suddenly, Weaver defecated on the other man. He was later arrested for harassment. After the incident, that was the only information that was made public by the police. Nearly everyone who heard or read the brief story was stunned, and they wanted more context to the story. A lot of people couldn't figure out how it was even possible to poop on someone while arguing on the side of the road. A few journalists decided to investigate the incident further, and they called up Weaver. Weaver explained that he has irritable bowel syndrome, and at times, he has problems controlling his bowels. He said his condition is exasperated when he's stressed out. Weaver said that after they started arguing, the other man, who was never identified, got up too close behind him. Suddenly, he had to go, and the man was just there. So he dropped his pants and shit on the man's leg. Weaver originally said he didn't have much of a choice, but then in his next statement, he said he could have missed the man if he had just turned away from him. Weaver said he was having a bad day, but it got worse. He claimed that normally he's a chill guy, and it usually takes a lot to get him to that point. He said that after he pooped on the man said nothing. Weaver said that the man just got into his car and drove away. Weaver said he didn't know if he was going to fight the citation. Number 4. The Akron Serial Pooper. Castle Homes is a quiet subdivision in Akron, Ohio. It is also home to a strange series of crimes which started in May 2012. A man was going around the neighborhood and pooping on things. His favorite targets were cars. He would shit on the door handles, and if a door was unlocked, he would get in the car and poop on one of the seats. One woman said that over 3 years, her car was targeted 4 times. Other times he targeted children's toys, and one person claimed he even defecated on a slide in a playground in the neighborhood. Between May 2012 and March 2015, there were 19 reports that someone had pooped on something in the neighborhood. The police said that most, if not all the poops, happened sometime between 3:30 and 5:30 a.m. The poopings have caused stress around the neighborhood, and neighbors were accusing each other of being the pooper. Then in the spring of 2015, there was a break in the case. A man was caught on camera shitting on the hood of a car. Despite there being a photograph of him in action, the man has never been identified. After the photograph went public, the story went viral, and it seems that all the attention drove the serial pooper underground. At the time of this recording, his identity is still a mystery. Number 3. Jonathan Glenn. On May 5, 2015, there was a stabbing in Galveston, Texas. The victim, who wasn't identified, was rushed to the hospital. The next morning, the victim was alive, but in critical condition. The police had a suspect, 29-year-old Jonathan Glenn. Glenn had a criminal record that included convictions for aggravated assault and kidnapping. The police tracked down Glenn, and when they went to arrest him, he ran. After a short foot chase, Glenn was arrested. He was placed into the backseat of a police car, and 2 officers got into the front seat. As they drove to the police station, Glenn took the opportunity to take a poop in the back seat. He then got the poop into his mouth and he spit it at the officers in the front of the car. He then wrapped the seatbelt around his neck and tried to strangle himself. The shit-splattered officers pulled over and cut the seatbelt. They restrained him further and took him the rest of the way to the police station. Luckily, the person that Glenn stabbed survived their wounds. Glenn was eventually convicted of aggravated assault and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Number 2. Diego Novella. Diego Novella is a millionaire playboy who was born and raised in Guatemala. His deceased mother's family owns a massive cement empire, and he lives off the benefits of the empire. At the end of July 2015, Novella, who was 41, and his 39-year-old American girlfriend, Gabrielle Cabrines Alban, were on vacation in Cape Town, South Africa. They were staying in a luxury hotel on the beach. Novella said he started doing drugs when he was 21 years old, and 20 years later, he was still dabbling in drugs. On the night of July 29th, Novella said that he and Alban smoked some marijuana and did some cannabis oil and Selectivum, which is a drug made from plants found in South America. Selectivum causes relaxation and sleepiness. At some point in the night, Novella said that he thought that Alban was a demonic entity. He also said that it felt like his mind had been hijacked. He attacked Alban, and he ended up beating and strangling her to death. He then shoved chocolate into her mouth and put a hairdryer between her legs. He also defecated on her head and feet. He then got a piece of paper and wrote the word "corrode," which supposedly is a slang term in Guatemala, which means piece of shit. He stuck the piece of paper to her forehead. Finally, he covered her body in candies and chips. He then walked out to the beach and into the water. He thought that everyone was staring at him, and he said that the sun turned black and started to pulse. Alban's body was found by the hotel staff not long after she was killed, and Novella was arrested shortly afterward. He went to trial in 2018, and he said he was insane at the time of the murder. The prosecutors argue that Alban probably called Novella offensive names, he snapped, and then beat and strangled her to death. But killing her wasn't enough, so he continued to degrade her body by defecating on her. Novella was ultimately found guilty. He will be sentenced in August 2018. Number 1. The Nopes and the Lamberts. In August 2015, the mother of a woman, only identified as DP, passed away. DP was 22 years old and she had autism. DP needed a caretaker, so 42-year-old Raylan Nope and her husband, 45-year-old Terry Nope, moved into DP's mobile home in Amite City, Louisiana. Not long after they moved in, Raylan's daughters, 21-year-old Bridget Lambert and 23-year-old Jody Lambert, and Terry's daughter, 20-year-old Taylor Nope, all moved in. At first, they let DP sleep on the mattress on the floor. Then they decided to build her a shack behind the mobile home where she could sleep. It was made from chicken wire, and the roof was a blue tarp. At night, supposedly so she didn't wander, they locked her in the makeshift shack. They gave her a 5-gallon bucket to use as a toilet. It wasn't long before the family made DP their slave. They would make her clean up the mobile home and do all the yard work. If her work wasn't done to their satisfaction, they wouldn't feed her. Then they started to physically abuse her. Just some of the horrifying abuse they did to her was kick her, choke her, they burned her with cigarettes, and they shot her at close range with a BB gun. One time, Terry hit her on the head with a wooden panel, which caused a deep cut. The family did not want to take DP for medical attention because they knew that they would be arrested. So her gaping head wound was closed with some super glue. Another time, they held her hand down and hit it with a hammer, which fractured several bones. Once again, she wasn't allowed to seek medical attention. If physically torturing the woman with autism wasn't bad enough, they tried to force her into prostitution as well. They made her undress in front of men who visited the mobile home in the hopes of seducing the men for money. They also made her simulate sex with a jalapeno pepper. They also made her eat horrible things. In one instance, Raylene put some of DP's mother's ashes in a bowl and then added some milk. She then made DP eat some of it. This caused DP to vomit on the table, and the family laughed at her. Another time, one of the family members spread dog shit on the bread and forced DP to eat it. Finally, Terry and his stepdaughter Jody got a bucket and drew sewage water from the septic tank. Then they dumped a bucket of urine and feces onto DP's head. Jody laughed when DP started screaming. While they were torturing her, the families were also stealing all of her disability benefits, totaling over $8,000. Besides stealing all her money and locking her up, the family also kept her captive in other ways. They forced her to take opiates and methamphetamines and told her that they would report her to the police if she didn't do what they said. After about 10 months of torture, the police finally learned about DP's situation. When they arrived at the mobile home, they found DP wandering around the yard. She was malnourished, and she had several severe bug bites. They arrested the 5 family members and charged them with a shitload of crimes, including forced labor, attempted sex trafficking, and hate crimes. The family members have yet to go to trial, but 4 of them are looking at sentences of life in prison, and the 5th family member may end up serving 5 years in prison. DP was handed over to Family Services. Thanks a lot for listening. Hopefully you didn't find it too gross. Of course, thank you so much for donating. But that's all for this month. Thanks again.